this is really, really important because I don't know if people get this. When you eat a meal, first, you should be energized after the meal. Like you should eat a meal and be like, whew, okay, I'm energized, I'm ready to go. You should have more mental clarity and you should not be hungry. So if those three things are happening, you nailed the meal. But if you're tired, if your you have brain fog and you're hungry within an hour later, you didn't nail that meal. And most of the time, what I have found is in order to nail those three things, you got to have protein. And there has to be a protein and there has to be some fat. But I think the fat conversation's been interesting because we went from no fat and low fat to everybody was, when the ketogenic diet first came out, everybody was like, you got to have all this fat. I disagree. I think we just incorporate, like, I drizzle olive oil over everything, a high quality olive oil as much as I can. So I just make sure I have some fat in there so that my blood sugar doesn't spike and that keeps my hunger. But if I took the protein out of that, I'd be hungry within an hour. I'd probably be tired within 30 minutes. So play with that. Like that protein absolutely accomplishes all the things you want to accomplish with a meal. And I think we think about food through the lens of our taste buds. We don't think about it through the lens of our blood sugar. And if you want to stop the blood sugar spike, you're going to need to put some protein in that meal.
Yeah. You know, that is one of the other things that is the principles that you talk about inside of the book. I think it's the first one that's there. You're talking about blood sugar and its relationship to calories.
Yeah.
What's the principle, if you want to say it out, plainly, and then expand on it? What do you want the audience to understand about this principle and how it relates to their life?
So the calorie principle, the calorie in, calorie out, I do not understand why in 2024, we are still so confused on this. There's a lot of people out there saying the literature says, if you want to lose weight, you want to lower your calorie input and increase your calorie output. Now, Jason Fung was the first one to say, hey guys, this changes your set point. Losing weight is more of a hormonal issue, and the hormone you want to control is insulin. So I see weight loss through that lens. I buy that principle because that is what I saw in my clinic. That's what I see online, that if you want to lose weight, you want less insulin. And in order to get less insulin, you need to have less blood sugar. End of story.
People call that like the hormone insulin hypothesis.
Yes,
is that the right name?
Something exactly, like that? Exactly. So, but the second thing that's so important about the blood sugar matters, calories don't, is what can you accomplish? Stephen Bartlett and I had a really fun conversation on this. The second interview I went on with him, I asked him, and I'll ask you the same question. Have you ever been able to succeed at knowing your calorie output every day and comparing that to your calorie input and getting the delta? Like, have you ever gone through a period in your life where you're like, okay, I have a delta of about 500 calories today?
Have I ever been in a period? So I work out with a trainer.
Right.
I got serious about it when I turned 40, which was about 2 years ago.
Right.
Had a small break in between, but I track all my calories inside of an app.
Right.
And so it's a program that he's kind of put together for me as somebody who kind of grew up vegetarian and under-muscled, under-caloried, under-fueled, and understanding how important it is to prioritize lean mass. So I track my calories. I don't want to be under that amount. But your question is, have you ever known what your the calories that you should be eating and then been under?
Yeah, do you at the end of the day go, I nailed my calorie count? It sounds like you have a good system. You have an app.
I'm literally tracking everything that I eat only because I'm trying to make sure my history is of under eating.
Yeah, right.
Right?
So
was a vegan for a long period of time. I was a raw food vegan.
Yeah.
I got used to, and I have a small frame, I got used to not eating that much.
Yeah.
So I have to make sure that I eat enough if I want to actually gain muscle, gain weight, and especially prioritize the protein.
It's just a hard measurement is my point. Like if I can let's say I take two different women. I'm going to use women as an example. One of them, I put a continuous glucose monitor on.
Yeah.
And I say, I did this recently with a patient I was working with. I'm like, just eat. She was vegetarian. I'm like, just eat. And what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the spikes, how many glucose spikes you have in a day. when I first, and I just said eat, and she was thin. She's a well-known actress, and she wants to stay thin for being in front of the camera. And when we first looked at that, she saw like 10 spikes in a day. And immediately I was like, tell me what your moods are like. Like if your blood sugar's spiking and then it's dropping, tell me how you feel throughout the day. And she's like, well, many times I'm energized and then I get lethargic, or I'm happy and then I get blue. Like her way of being tracked those 10 spikes. So then what we did is I said, I'm not trying to get you to eat meat. I just want you to add some fat to each one of those spikes. And I changed some things she was doing in her coffee and a few things that were just really causing too many blood sugar spikes, and add in some protein-rich vegetables. So we added in fat and we added in vegetables, and immediately, same type of food, different combination, she was now down to 5 spikes a day. And so we just kept playing with the composition of food and the type of food she was eating so that we got the blood sugar nailed. She was also worried about being too underweight, and we started to see her weight go back up to a homeostatic place where she felt amazing in her skin. She was able to do her job, had tons of energy, her moods went up. That's the power of blood sugar. Okay, second woman, I say every single day, you're gonna count how many calories that you have eaten in food, and you're gonna count how many calories that you've been burning based off of not just your fitness, but it has to be everything. It has to be all movement, has to be everything you do in a day. And we're going to count that so that you know if you're going to gain weight or not. In that scenario, one, it's very difficult to do. I don't know most women, like people will pick up a box and they will say, oh, this has this low calorie, I should eat it, but they don't really understand what that means. So there's not as much scientific certainty as that darn CGM that's telling you real time what's going on with your blood sugar. The second thing is the quality of her food, the combination of food that she's putting together. If she just shows me the total calorie output versus calorie input, that says nothing about metabolic health. That doesn't say anything about, was that good food? Were there obesogens in that food? Were there toxic fats in those food? Like, it doesn't give us enough data to know if the quality of food she's eating is going to stabilize her hormones, is going to help her lose weight, and is going to prevent chronic disease. The blood sugar reader, I can tell you, I was so proud of the work I did with this actress, because she came back to me, and after the next season of her show, she's like, I've never been happier. I've never eaten more. I've never had a better relationship to food. Everybody on the set saw a difference in me. Yeah, because I taught her blood sugar. If I had taught her calories, none of that byproduct would have happened. So it's a wider lens that we can, and a more accurate way to look at our relationship to food and what it's doing to our body, as opposed to counting calories.
I think that everybody's got to find the vehicle that works well for them, which goes back to your earlier point that's there. I think one of the confusing things that is there often for even people like me, like myself, when somebody who's listening hears that, like, hey, it's about blood sugar, it's not about calories, they can be left with the feeling that, you can still consume more calories and lose weight. Like if you take your basal metabolic rate of like what your body would normally be burning during a day, and you can come up with that. Usually most people are not trained. You'll need a calculator. Somebody can help you. You measure yourself over a period of time, right? Is that, can you actually eat, even if it's from whole food sources, can you eat a surplus of calories? Can you have 1,000 extra calories, even if it's from whole food sources, and lose weight? And I think that, it's a lot of the people that I, am having on the podcast who are very open to the blood sugar conversation. They seem to have landed that, like, hey, calories are not the full story. There's something a lot more than that, but we can't say that they don't matter. Just the same way that we wouldn't say, like, hey, if your son or daughter wanted to gain weight, right? We wouldn't think that they can gain weight without eating extra calories. Right?
Right.
So I think that that's the part where actually these long format podcasts are a great place. And I love Jason Fung. He's been on this podcast, David Ludwig, Gary Taubes. You know, the hormone insulin hypothesis is just the question of, do you believe that people can actually lose weight without whatever vehicle they do? If they use intermittent fasting to do it, if they use OMAD, if they use, ketogenic diet, whatever vehicle they do. But ultimately, if they're actually going to lose weight, they got to have a little bit of a reduction amongst how much they're burning. Well, they definitely can't be over consuming calories. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, because here's the lens I look through it. And this is maybe because I was in clinical practice teaching lifestyle and weight loss for 25 years. And it became, in order to get people to lose weight, the question was, how do I motivate people? It doesn't matter what a science article says. What matters is the person sitting in front of you and motivating them to be able to create a lifestyle that helps them drop weight. And what I found was, I tried for years with women. My practice was full of, I call them the mama bears. It was full of 30 and 40-year-old women that had gained a bunch of weight when they were pregnant and they couldn't lose that weight. And I started my nutritional side of my practice having these women track their calories. And we got no momentum. And I believe that in order to stay motivated, you have to have some momentum. You have to see some result. We didn't see that result. And if we did see the result, the minute they ate more calories, to Jason Fung's point, they gained it back and now they lost their motivation. Okay. Then I flipped it and I went to these women and I'm like, I just want to do this one thing for a hot moment. When I first learned fasting, and I was like, I want you to take all the food you're eating and I just want you to compress it into an 8-hour eating window. And let me teach you how to get to that. Within 2 weeks, they literally would come into my office and it looked like somebody had taken a coat of fat off of them.
So just to make sure we understand that correctly, they're eating the same food that they're eating, they're compressing it.
Yeah.
So what do you believe was the mechanism in that instance that was leading to weight loss? Was it a reduction in calories? Was it stable blood sugar, but they're eating the same food that they're eating? What was leading to that situation where they had actual weight loss?
Stable blood sugar.
But they're eating the same foods that they're eating.
They're eating the same calories, right? So calories hasn't changed. They are eating, they're within a short window, they're having their blood sugar spikes, but then they had this longer period, 15, 16, 18 hours, where their blood sugar was coming down.
So you feel that there was a reparative process when they're not eating, and that was the primary driver of weight loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on in the body that you believe is happening that period would be driving weight loss specifically?
So let's put it through a metabolic switch. When I'm eating food, I initiate the blood sugar metabolism. So my blood sugar goes up, the cells insulin goes up, the cells absorb all of that. If I eat something that's really high in blood sugar, my blood sugar is going to spike really high. A ton of insulin is going to come in. And all of that glucose and insulin has to be pushed into the cell. Insulin resistance is a traffic jam of too much glucose and insulin going into the cell. So the brilliant body, what it does is it says, wait a second, I can't get all this glucose into the cell. Let me go store it in fat. So it goes and it stores it in fat. Now you go through a period every day of 16, 17 hours of no food coming in. The body metabolically switches over into the ketogenic energy system, this fat burning system. And it says, wait a second, I stored something a few days ago in fat and there's no blood sugar coming in. There's no nutrients coming in. I should probably burn that fat so I can make a ketone and I can keep the energy of this system going. So in the fat burning state, in the fasted state, you are going and getting the excess that you stored, whether it was yesterday or 10 years ago. This is the work of Sachin Panda with 16-8 fasting. He found that if you took somebody who ate the standard Western diet, which is packed with horrible oils and refined flours and sugars, and you had them eat in an 8-hour eating window, giving them 16 hours to recover from the toxicity of that meal, their blood pressure didn't go up, their cholesterol didn't go up, they didn't gain weight, their liver enzymes didn't change. It was like they were metabolically immune from the damage this Western diet created. That's what happens in the fasted state, is the body repairs itself and lets go of all the excess that it has been storing glucose and toxins and hormones, and it burns that up and it gets rid of it.
I've had Sachin Panda on. We've talked in pretty depth about his work.
Yeah.
I think that's one perspective. Another perspective is that he believes that all of our organs have a biological clock, right? Yeah. The way that we have our full body's 24-hour circadian rhythm, and that our organs individually, especially the ones that are related to digestion, processing, et cetera, that when we were designed to be eating when sunlight is out. Yeah. We weren't designed to be eating late night or snacking or other stuff. Is that those same amount of calories that happen later in the evening, it's when our organ systems are not optimized to be functioning during that time period.
Yep.
I've heard it less so as the item that you're mentioning, and I'm only mentioning that for my own clarity. It sounds like it's more about the optimization, about what is the ideal time for that organ to be operating at its best. If you feed it at when it's not meant to be operating at its best, then you're going to end up with a more dysfunctional organ trying to process this input that's there.
Well, in my conversation with Sachin, we talked about the eating window. What was the proper timing of the eating window? So he didn't talk about the organ systems, but he talked about the eating window. He really believed that you wait an hour after you get up before you eat, because he said you need to let melatonin go down. When melatonin is high, it makes you sleepy, but it also makes your pancreas sleepy, was his exact words. So you need to make sure that you wait until the melatonin goes down. Now your insulin system becomes much more sensitive. On the back end, the same thing. When it gets dark out at night, melatonin kicks in, and now your whole insulin glucose system becomes sleepy again. So we're both saying the same thing. You could take that 8 hours and just chunk it right in the middle of the day. I'm not saying fasting is skipping breakfast. I'm saying when we look at 16-8, take 8 hours, let's combine it with another version of his work, which is, and make sure it's in the daylight. And now you're not doing it when the body is in this more reparative, sleepy state. As far as the organs go, the repair of organs, I like to look at them through the lens of sleep. As far as repair goes, it's like 2 and 3 in the morning, the adrenals and the liver is repairing itself. So each organ has a large intestine repairs at 4 in the morning. Like each organ system has a different time that it repairs. So during the daylight, as far as when are those organ systems at their best, the only conversation I had with him was make sure it's in the daylight, because you're going to be much more insulin sensitive.
Coming back to this idea that we were talking about blood sugar and fasting, I sort of look at it as like, can they both be true, right? And blood sugar and calories.
Oh, yeah.
Is that, can they both be true?
They sure can.
And do we need them to be, does it need to be one as the winner or another one as the winner? I could tell you as a male who is not maybe the main demographic that you're talking to.
Yeah. No, I love this.
Putting on muscle, eating enough, like even for me, like who is somebody who has never been obese or overweight, but I've been skinny fat according to my body composition, right? Yeah. Both through a DEXA and through caliber testing. And I've seen firsthand that like you put a long pour of olive oil, which I think is amazing food and has so many benefits, versus a short pour of olive oil. You're talking about the difference between 100 calories and like 700 calories. And when I track those things, I can see that even for someone like myself, who's not obese, I can quickly put on body fat around my waist or other areas because my trainer measures me every single week. Yeah. And I think that one of the important things that I've been on the journey of sharing with my audience is that, and this is coming from somebody who's like, I love CGMs. I'm an investor in Levels Health. Amazing. Like Casey is one of my, close friends. And I think largely a lot of those guys would agree too, is that, the blood sugar piece relates to mental focus. inflammation on a daily basis, energy levels that play a role. And like blood sugar is so important, and even more important than blood sugar is like getting a regular snapshot of your fasting insulin, right? And then eventually one day I believe that we'll move from blood sugar to insulin monitors. We just don't have the ability to do that right now, because that's actually a better predictor or an indication of what's going on inside the body. Blood sugar is more of a proxy that's there. So there's a lot of reasons to have a balanced blood sugar that's there. But just the same way that I wouldn't tell somebody who wants to gain weight that, hey, you can gain weight by making your blood sugar dysregulated, right? Instead of eating more calories, like, hey, you have to actually eat more calories if you want to eat more calories than you're burning, if you want to gain weight. I think it's important for my audience, which is largely, and there's probably a huge overlap with your audience, is that I see a lot of people who are generally healthy compared to the average population who still don't feel good, and they're working through a lot of different things. And then there's this belief and focus, and a lot of them would shop at Erewhon or Whole Foods or other stuff, that as long as that they're eating organic and as long as they're eating healthy foods and the occasional snacks or other things, they're not going to be in this position where they're going to end up gaining weight. And I see a lot of those people, and they've never audited their calories before. They don't realize that when they're eating something, not that I believe that calories is the whole story, but actually that thing that they ate that they thought was one serving was 3 servings. I know, because I go through that every single day. Like I'm tracking my calories. I'm like, this pour of Primal Kitchen, which is my favorite dressing, right? Shout out to Mark Sisson. This pour is actually like 2.5 servings instead of 1 serving. I think that people actually are not really good at understanding how much they're consuming. And we live in a day and age that healthy food is so ubiquitous, and there's so many healthy snacks. So I look at it in the middle, and it's like calories in, calories out is not the full story, but can we completely ignore it? I don't know, because then it also brings up the question of how are these weight loss, because I know you have some thoughts on this, how are these weight loss drugs working? Right? Do you have a belief or a vision on how these weight loss drugs are leading to weight loss inside of people?
I have lots to say on the weight loss drugs. But first I want to go back to, because I think it's really important that those of us that are educating about health, that we help people find the path that works for them. I can't say that enough. So for you, what I hear is, hey, counting calories really works for my goal of what I'm doing. If you came to me for a consultation and you were like, I want help building muscle, and you said to me, and I got to tell you, counting calories is really working for me, I would never look you in the eye and say, well, you're full of like that's pretty Drew, you should be counting blood sugar. I would say, awesome, let's work with that. Let's see what we can do, because that's already working for you. I had a clinic of women that were beaten up by the calorie in, calorie out dieting that they've been doing since they were 16 years old. I had women that had so much guilt and shame around their relationship to food that they couldn't eat anything unless it said, low calorie on it. They had so much shame looking at themselves in the mirror, but thinking they did something wrong, not realizing that it was the food industry that had poured chemicals into the low-calorie foods that were filled with obesogens, that were hijacking their stem cells and turning their stem cells into making fat cells. And those women were struggling, and there are a lot of women out there that are struggling. So if we keep telling those women, hey, guess what? You gotta focus on calories or you're never gonna lose weight, you are basically saying you have failed over and over and over again. Keep trying, maybe one day you'll succeed.
I just wanna be clear, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think what I'm saying is I'm trying to understand your perspective because I'm trying to understand what are the beliefs that lead into it. Like, I agree with you that blood sugar is important, right? And I'm asking simply because I'm genuinely interested from my own perspective. Like, that's why I want you on the podcast, and I'm sorting out my own sort of thoughts on things. I'm asking some fundamental things, which are, do you believe that people can gain weight or lose weight
too much
without, like, is it some other mechanism? This is the part where I'm genuinely curious. Like, if somebody loses weight, is there some sort of other mechanism inside of the body, right? And I'm not trained in this, you are. Is there some sort of other mechanism that's leading to that weight loss besides however they've done it, through blood sugar, through intermittent fasting, like I agree with any vehicle that works for people, what is the actual mechanism that is causing weight loss? Is it a reduction in energy consumption or is there something else that's happening? And I feel like one distinction that I've gotten from you is that you actually believe that when people are fasting, there's some sort of repair mechanism that independently of what's being consumed from calories, higher or lower, that is leading to weight loss. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Doubling down on like, hey, everybody needs to do calories in and calories out. Like, I don't do that.
Right.
I'm just talking about my process of working with my trainer.
Yeah.
It's more to help my audience understand that, hey, what does she believe is actually happening in the body that's leading to weight loss when it happens?
Great. Okay. So this is what's happening. When you're in the fasted state, the longer you stay there, the more your intelligent body figures out what it stored, where the glucose is that it stored years ago. Where did it put the excess? All fat is it's excess something. The body is so well designed that what it decided to do, instead of putting that excess around your internal organs, it put it around your belly, your face, your chest, your back of your arms. And when you go into a fasted state, because the blood sugar is going down, because your body is now in this ketogenic energy system, in order to make a ketone, it goes and finds all the fat and excess it stored years ago, and it burns that up. And so it releases that, which is why when people start fasting, they look like a fat coat has come off of them, because the body is now using this other fuel source. It has to make a ketone, but it can only make a ketone by burning fat. And in that fat is all that excess of that diet you had, the high Western standard diet you were eating 20, 30 years ago. So now, is in that also a calorie reduction? Possibly.
Okay, got it.
So I'm not totally refuting that. But why the principle number one is blood sugar matters, calories don't, is because of the psyche of women.
That you feel that ultimately all the data has shown, meaning not that you feel this, I'm sort of sharing, that a program that people can stick to. So the stats are that 80% of people who lose weight will end up regaining it, and if not more afterwards. So really the methodology is, what is a program that individual, and you're largely talking to a female audience in a particular age group, probably multiple age groups because you have a big following. Yeah. What is a thing that they can stick to? Whatever vehicle they could stick to. And maybe inside of that is some calorie reduction, but you're primarily focused on what can they stick to.
That's right.
Yeah.
What can they stick to? That's the only thing that matters, because how many women, and again, my lens is women, how many women have gone on a diet, lost weight, and regained it back again?
And men too.
Yeah, men too.
Right?
For sure.
This happens to everybody.
Yeah.
This happens to everybody.
Yeah. But what happens, the difference that I see with women is that women turn on themselves. And instead of, like, men might be like, hey, that diet didn't work. Oh, I fell back into my old habits, and typically will move on. I'm not saying that they don't turn on themselves, but I know, because I've sat in the trenches with so many women, they turn on themselves and they go, I must have done something wrong.
Let's pause right there for 1 second. In all your experience, in all your years, and this might be the most important topic we talk about here, and there's so much more to get to, by the way.
Yeah.
And thank you for going deep. This is the purpose for long format podcasts.
Agreed.
And my audience, it's not like 1 week I talk about, there's a lot of podcasts that cover different subjects each week.
Yeah.
We're kind of more narrow here.
Yeah.
So my audience wants to go deep. So I'm gathering questions from them. I'm gathering my questions that I have for my own confusion. So I acknowledge you. I want to thank you for coming on and going through these things, because these are things that are genuinely confusing to a lot of people. What have you uniquely seen, because you've mentioned it, what do you think is going on that women are more likely to do this, turn on themselves? And what are the best strategies that you've seen that can lower, dissipate, or hopefully ultimately remove that behavior? I'm just going to call it negative for lack of a better word. So would love your thoughts on that.
The sheer reality is we live in a patriarchal world. And by patriarchal, I don't mean men. I mean a power, a system over us. And that system says a woman is worthy when she is beautiful and when she is sexy. I will tell you, as a 55-year-old woman who has lived in that system, so much of our worth comes from looking a certain way that is appeasing and likable to the patriarchal world. You're a size this, you weigh this, then you are beautiful and I accept you. So many women are fighting every single day to lose weight so they can feel worthy. That has to stop. That is what drives me, is that when we keep saying the reason you gained weight is because you ate too many calories, or it's your genetics, or your BMI should be this, you are telling a woman you are worthy when you hit that mark. I don't want a woman's worthiness to be based off of how she looks. I don't want a woman's worthiness to be based off a number on a scale. I want her to feel worthy from the inside out. And the way that I have watched that and seen that happen is by helping her understand her blood sugar, because she can control that. And as she learns to understand her blood sugar, then she starts to see, oh, wait, I'm in control here. I can tack on these fasting windows and I can start to balance this blood sugar out. I can feel a little leaner. And then I can have this really cool relationship with food that's not built around the calories that I've been trying to count for 50 plus years and never worked for me. I can look at a banana and go, there's potassium in there. And that, oh my God, that's going to help me build certain hormones. So it's different for men and women because of how the culture treats us. We are not treated kindly when we're not beautiful. And so many women are running around with, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I have to change how I look in order to be worthy and palatable to the culture. This is the problem with menopausal women right now. Menopausal women are so scared of being tossed aside by a society that says you're old and you're worthless, that we're freezing our faces, we're putting toxins in our body, we're dyeing our hair, we're going, plastic surgery is like skyrocketing because 50 and 60-year-old women are now hitting that age and they're like, but if I'm not beautiful, what am I? That's horrible. That has to stop. And this is what I'm coming up against every single day when I'm in the trenches trying to redefine women's relationship to food. I'm really helping her redefine the relationship to her body and let her know you are powerful, you are worthy. If you don't fit the BMI, but you're happy and you have energy and your blood work's looking pretty good, then great. Worthiness, find worthiness somewhere else. You're never gonna be a size 2. Maybe you're gonna be a size 8. And you are completely balanced and healthy, and that makes you worthy. So it's deeper emotional for women.
What have you seen in addition to the period of just using the words that I heard from you? I might have gotten it wrong, so please correct me.
Yeah.
The vehicle of sort of having a better relationship with food through blood sugar.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you've seen on the mentality front? Other tips and tricks, who you surround yourself with that you've also seen make a difference in this area that we're talking about?
Who you hang around matters. It matters for two things. The first, I'm a big believer that who you hang around is who you'll start to think like. So be very careful. Look at the people's lives, the closest people to you, and ask yourself, do I want to think like them? And if you don't want to think like them, go find some people you want to think like and hang around them. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when you're in any kind of relationship, whether it's an intimate one, whether it's a friend one, you should always leave an interaction with a human feeling like you've been lifted up. Where are the cheerleaders? This is another thing that we do to each other, and it's horrible, is we cut each other down and we compete with each other. Why are we not cheerleaders for each other and lifting each other up? As humans, we should be lifting each other up. Look at social media. Some days I have this big following, and some days I'm like, I'm not sure I want to participate in this game anymore. I don't want to watch names being called. I don't want to watch people cutting each other down. What are we doing? Like, health isn't just your blood work. Health is your environments that you're putting yourself in. And I think especially for women, because women have been constantly told, be this way, be more of this, not enough of this. Like, society has a very clear way that women should show up. And when a woman's putting her health back together, the environment in which she's doing that in matters, and the people she's hanging around matters. Because as long as women are competing against each other, as long as we're cutting each other down, we're going to be unhealthy. And that doesn't get talked about enough, I think.
Well, I'm glad we spent a little bit of time on that. I mean, we could probably do like a whole series on that.
Thank you for letting, because it's really, really tugs on my heart.
You know, there was a very powerful book that I read a few years ago, and the researcher's name is Luann Brisden, I believe.
Yeah. I've read it.
The Female Brain.
Yes.
One of the key concepts inside of that book is that there are neurological differences, and she wrote another sister book, The Male Brain, between the male brain and the female brain. And this is not about a battle of the sexes. It's more about understanding what is the evolutionary, potentially, what is the evolutionary mechanism behind these shifts in the brain. So one of the things that she talks about inside the book, you've read it, you know it, but I'll just share it for the audience, is that women have more neuroconnections from the left to right hemisphere and the right to left hemisphere than men do.
Yep.
Men have more, for oversimplistic reasons, they have more front to back.
Yep.
So that leads to, often in young boys, you see that boys tend to be obsessed with things.
Yep.
And young girls tend to be obsessed or focused on people. So from a young age, whether it's Barbies or G.I. Joes, young women will play with things that represent people. They're more aware of people. This is why you have recommendations of educators today that potentially, depending on the age of your son and the time of the calendar of the year that he's born, there's a lot of recommendations to hold boys back a year before starting school. And a lot of my friends in my men's group over here, them and their wives have decided that, we're going to wait the next year because women are so much more mature. Everybody hears this, right? It's not just a stereotype, it's real. Women are so much more mature at a young age. And evolutionary, the sort of theory inside of that is that women from a young age played a role and were designed in society to be the caretakers and the peacekeepers, right? Yeah. Amongst many other things, like many things. Like they literally are the only sex that can create life, right? Yeah. So not to diminish it and just put it that. There's so many things that, female biology is designed for. And because that, there is a lot of focus on being aware of what other people think of you, because your brain is wired to be focused on the interpersonal relationships of not just your relationship to other men, other women, everybody, right? And in our modern world, that sort of mechanism has been hijacked because we live in a day and age where we have so many more people that don't have your long-term interest, men and women, that you're seeing examples of. Media, celebrity, whatever it might be. So we are designing the system with this thing that was literally one of the keys to success, in addition to grandmothers, right? Yes. I've heard you talk about this before. We've talked about this before. Grandmothers being, a huge part of why the human race is successful, and menopause, and human beings being one of only a few species that go through menopause. And that our modern world, social media in particular, is designed to, unfortunately, hijack that comparison component, right? Whether it was done on purpose, whether it's a byproduct, it's accident, it's whatever, it leads to this thing of being more protective, right? That the recommendation is that women be more protective, and the men who love them, and there's going to be a range. There's probably men who have more of a brain that might operate that way, right? There's so many variations that are there. But to be careful about letting influences in, because you're immediately going to start to, and I would agree that this happens to men too, you're going to start to prioritize opinions of people that you actually may not care about, but your brain has thought it should care about them. And I think that I understand what you mean by your definition of like the patriarchy component, but I think that the element that I would add into that is that we never designed this system intentionally, and so we live in this de facto system.
Agreed.
And it could be called a lot of different things, but it's up to us to design, what does our new world look like? Right? For everybody's health. Men, women, kids, adults, everybody involved.
It's so interesting because my next book is really looking at what the brain changes are that happen to women after 40 as we go through menopause, and actually how it's working for us, how it's actually working in our favor. And I'll come back when that book's written. But there's something I want to say that ties into what you just said. There's a feminist philosopher, her name is Carol Gilligan, and she wrote a book called In a Different Voice. And she said, if you go to a boy or a girl at 11 and you ask them, let's use it since we're on the topic of food, you ask both the boy and girl, what do you want? What do you want to eat at 11? Both the boy and the girl will give you definitively, this is what I want to eat. Now, fast forward to 13, 12 and 13. You ask the same boy and girl, what do you want to eat? And the boy will tell you what he wants to eat. And the girl will say, I don't know, what do you want? What are you eating? That relational brain kicks in when the hormones kick in. And all of a sudden, the female brain is looking at everything through the relationship or through the lens of relationship. So now I'm 35 years old. My hormones have changed my brain to really function from a place of, I want to make sure I'm in relationship with everybody. I go to a trainer tells me to work out, tells me to eat a certain way. I don't get the results that I wanted to get or that the trainer thought I would get. In order to be in relationship with the trainer now, instead of blaming the trainer, I'll blame myself. I must have done something wrong. You know, how many women walk around, they go, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. Like, I catch women all the time, like apologizing for they shouldn't be apologizing for. When we look at food and this relationship with our body and this relationship to food and how we set women up for success, we have to bring in the relationship brain, which is why you will hear me say to women over and over again, like, you're powerful. You can do this. The N of one is so important. You find your path. Let's work together. I always tell women that, like, I'm the doctor that's linking arms with you, and we're going to do this together. I'm not going to stand over you and tell you what to do, because what's important right now is that we get your relationship brain in relationship with you, not in relationship with me. Because if you're going to try to please me, if you're going to try to put me, I always tell people, like, I don't want to be a guru. I just want to deliver a message that lifts women up so that they start to see how powerful they are to themselves and stop creating this system where they are constantly comparing themselves to the rest of the world, because that's how their brain is programmed. So here's what I want women to know is fasting works for you. All different lengths fasts will absolutely work for you. You just have to time them to your hormones. And this is where we really differ from men. So if you look at like let's just take a woman's menstrual cycle, and we can talk about postmenopausal because that comes up a lot. But at the front half of a woman's menstrual cycle, she does amazing with fasting. The back half, not so great with fasting. That's when we need to avoid fasting. Now, there's a lot of nuance in all of that, but to really go deep into the question that you asked, which is, what do women need to know? Why do we need to fast like girls? Is because we have to vary the way we approach fasting. We can't just click into 16 hours every single day. We can't click into one meal a day, became very popular in the fasting movement. We can't just do the same thing over and over again every day of the month, because our hormones are constantly changing.
Let's pull on some of those threads that are there. So what's the challenge with some of those approaches that are there? For example, one meal a day. They got very popular. That's out there specifically for women. And obviously there's these different stages that women are at, depending on what age they are and whether they're menopausal or whether they're in their prime fertility years. So what's the challenge with an approach like that as one fasting tool that people are using?
Yeah, a lot of people are doing one meal a day. It's like once you find that groove, you're like, oh, this is so easy and convenient. And then you just want to keep doing it over and over again. So let me kind of back up for a moment and sort of give the big picture of why fasting works. Is what we're doing is we're mimicking what we did primally back in the cave days. And so back in those days, we would walk out of the cave and there wouldn't be men and women would walk out and there wouldn't be any food. So we would have to go hunt for food. And in that ability of the human body to go hunt for food, we switched over into another fuel source, which is called the fat burner system or the ketogenic energy system. And we used ketones to go find food. And then when they hunted for food, they brought it back and then they feasted for days. So the human body in general, both men and women, are meant to have feast-famine cycling. We need to go into periods of less food, and then you can go into periods where you're feasting, what I say, on the right foods. That is how our metabolism really shines best. Now, the challenge, so if you do one meal a day over and over again, you're not in accordance with that feast-famine cycling. You were not meant to eat all day. You were not meant to fast all day. You were meant to dip in and out of different styles of eating and different styles of fasting. Now, for women, this is even more important because when you look at, let's just say that, let's pull on the thread of estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone are two of the major sex hormones that drive women, and they need vastly different approaches. So estrogen does amazing with fasting. Progesterone, you will completely tank your progesterone with fasting. So if a woman is doing one meal a day over and over and over again, eventually she's going to lose progesterone. And if you lose progesterone, you're going to be more anxious. You're going to have trouble sleeping. Your hair is going to fall out. You're going to have trouble calming your body and your mind. And this is literally what we saw on my YouTube channel, is that everybody started doing, after the obesity code came out, everybody started doing one meal a day. They got so excited about the weight loss benefits of fasting, they started doing one meal a day. And then they all came to my YouTube channel where I was teaching variation. And I started seeing that the women had very consistently similar results and problems. And it was exactly what I just said. Hair falling out, some of them were gaining weight back, trouble sleeping, highly anxious. And it was all the women because progesterone cannot handle one meal a day.
It also seems that if somebody's continuously doing one meal a day, especially as they enter into their later years, it might be more difficult for them to get the appropriate amount of protein they need in their body to maintain muscle mass and avoid things like sarcopenia. Is that also a challenge that's there too?
It's a huge challenge. And then let's put it in the context of women. So we have to remember that protein is the most important macronutrient. You know, in the whole low carb movement, we got excited about and villainized carbs, although I believe nature's carbs are healing. I don't think we need to totally put the enemy badge on carbs. But with protein, we are not eating enough protein as humans, but as women, we need more protein than ever. And especially after 40, when we start to go through those menopausal years, we need protein. So if we're doing one meal a day, you need at least 30 grams of protein per meal to trigger amino acid receptor sites in your muscles to grow your muscles stronger. But on a daily basis, I really do believe 1 gram of protein for 1 pound of body weight you want to be is a good measurement. But how are you going to accomplish that with one meal a day?
There was a popular book on the topic of one meal a day that was written by James Cameron's wife. And I think, they're very vocal about their advocacy is really from a place of they truly believe that plant-based is the best for the world.
Yeah.
And they are also seeing that one meal a day. I went to a talk of hers in Santa Monica, just as like a supportive thing, just seeing what's out there in the world and always being open-minded. And it also seemed that the idea of preaching one meal a day was another way to get people to cut down specifically maybe animal protein.
Yeah.
That was being, that it was kind of the vehicle to kind of get people to that place.
Yeah.
And just was interesting. I just was, paying attention to that. Yeah. Obviously, people can eat whatever they want to eat or not eat whatever they want to eat.
Amen.
But let's zoom out of one meal a day.
Yeah.
And let's go back to the idea of fasting. So you said something that a few other women, you guys are in a small but powerful minority. And I'm proud to say that my podcast has been one of those that was early on really giving voice to a lot of the great women in this space. But the idea that women cannot fast like men.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
And why do certain things work for men that may not necessarily work for women?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think what all of us are trying to do is bring to light the conversation in the health world that men, when you look at your hormones, you work off of a 24-hour system. You get testosterone every 15, 20 minutes. You're getting a pulse of testosterone. It'll come back in another 20 minutes. And testosterone is pretty much what the primary hormone that drives you. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not affected. Estrogen is still a part of something you need to keep in the mix and make sure you're not doing endocrine disruptors and all of that. But you really have one hormone that is going to convert into other hormones and is driving you. Women, we have 3 hormones. We have estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. You have it coming in a 24-hour period. We have these 3 hormones coming in a 30-day, 28, 30-day period. So when we look at the characteristics of these hormones, testosterone for both men and women does amazing with fasting. Now, we don't have a ton of studies for women on fasting and testosterone. I wish we did. We have on men, we see 24-hour fast, you can upregulate testosterone by like 2,000%. Men do so well with fasting because it has such an energizing experience to testosterone, and you can really upregulate testosterone. But women, we only get testosterone during ovulation. We don't get testosterone much the rest of our cycle. We get estrogen in the front half, and then we get progesterone primarily in the back half. And progesterone and estrogen have to be treated differently. So estrogen is very forgiving. You can do a lot of cardio, you can do long fasts, you can do low carb, like anything that's gonna bring glucose down, bring insulin down, estrogen's gonna shine. If you have PCOS, this is one thing I write about in the book, you're really going to benefit from doing longer fasts, going into those low carb moments. It's going to help you balance out estrogen and testosterone. But in the back half of our cycle, when we get progesterone's completely the opposite. So what happens with progesterone is if cortisol goes high, progesterone gets shy. Like she's out. Like you want to run a marathon, it's day 21 of your cycle. It's not the best time to do it because as cortisol is up, you're going to see progesterone go low. So any stressor like a fast is a stressor, exercise can be a stressor, is going to raise cortisol, and now progesterone goes away. Second thing on why women need to fast differently is that we actually are more insulin resistant the week before our periods. And that's to progesterone's advantage. Progesterone needs glucose to be higher. So I can't tell you how many women that I've put CGMs on, continuous glucose monitors, and just by teaching them how to fast like a girl, we still are seeing that glucose is going up the week before her period because that's what progesterone needs.
And to take a quick little pause, I mean, we've done so many episodes on this topic, but you never know who's listening.
Okay.
Just give us the quick breakdown on insulin resistant versus insulin sensitive. It's something that kind of confuses a lot of people, but it's always nice to get a rehash from someone.
Okay, so insulin resistance means that your cells cannot use insulin to your advantage. So insulin is the hormone that will actually push glucose into our cells so they can be used. So if you're insulin resistant, that can't happen. And then what the body does is it has to store glucose and insulin somewhere else. So it stores it in fat. Then it stores it in the liver. Then it'll store it in your eyes. It'll store it in all the places that the mitochondria are hanging out. It'll just pack all that glucose, store it in your brain. So that's insulin resistance. Insulin sensitive means that when insulin shows up, you can actually use insulin to your advantage and push glucose into the cells so the mitochondria can use it for energy.
Yeah. And people often think of it as being something that only individuals that are overweight or obese are dealing with. But there's plenty of people that are in that skinny fat category. You know, I come from an Indian and South Asian background. A huge percentage of that population, men and women, now that we're sort of in North America and Europe and eating the sort of standard diets that are there, a huge percentage of those people, even if their BMI doesn't put them in a category of being overweight or obese, they still have insulin resistance, and it's a major driver of a lot of things that they're suffering with.
Yeah, it's such a good point, because when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of talk about metabolic syndrome being the core of a poor immune system. And then when metabolic syndrome became a very popular topic during that time, there was a study that came out, I'm pretty sure you've heard of it, that only 12% of Americans are metabolically fit. So then the question became, well, what does metabolic fitness mean? And it's everything from your blood pressure to your cholesterol, to your fasting glucose, to your circumference of your waist, to your liver enzymes. Like, there's a variety of things that need to be in balance without medication for you to be metabolically fit. And it's really, the fact is, we've got everybody's walking around insulin resistant, but if you are just judging insulin resistance off of weight, you're missing the whole discussion.
So connecting this back to the topic that started it, you were saying that women in their fertility years, right, in their prime fertility years, a week before their period, are naturally more have challenges with sort of processing and using insulin.
Yeah.
Right? They're more insulin resistant in that period of time.
Yeah.
And so what kind of impact does that have when it comes to how they're thinking about navigating the different stages of their cycle, specifically like that week before their period?
Yeah. Well, this is the reason I laugh, is because ask any woman, what does she want to do the week before her period? She wants to sit on the couch with a box of pizza and a tub of ice cream, do nothing, and eat carbs. And usually there's some chocolate involved in that, like craving chocolate, which is interesting too, because if you look at what we naturally are inclined to do, which is slow down, eat more carbs, and crave things like chocolate, well, let's look at what the demands of progesterone are. Progesterone needs you to raise glucose, so that's why you crave carbs. And you need magnesium to make progesterone, which is a large part of why a lot of women crave chocolate. And you can't have cortisol high. So what progesterone does is try to get you to slow down and have less energy so that you can actually be in a place where you have all the right mixture of cortisol, insulin, glucose, everything's got its flow so that progesterone can make her appearance. And yet we villainize that. We push through that last week. We haven't been taught what the importance of that last week of our cycle is, but yet there are very clear demands that progesterone has. And I believe this is a large reason why we have such a hormonal mess for women, is because we haven't been taught when we can lean into more of the challenging health habits and when to actually pause.
So that would be, for example, a time where we want to maybe ease up for women, not we, but for women that have their period and their cycle and everything, they might want to be easing up on things that be positive stressors at other times during their cycle, but now it might be too much on the body.
That's right. That's right. And this is a big part of my message, and what I put in the book is, we're brilliantly designed. Like, how many times have we, complained about the fact, I don't feel like doing anything. I just want to eat carbs. I don't feel like going out. I don't feel like working out. And it's like since we haven't been taught the design of our bodies, what ends up happening is we've just been bitching and moaning about PMS. But progesterone's been there the whole time saying, hey, here's the environment I need you to live in. And so this is part of what I'm trying to break free for women, is if you don't feel like working out and it's day 21 of your cycle, there's a reason for that. If you're craving more carbs, how about you go, instead of to the box of pizza, and we start to bring in some sweet potatoes and look at nature's carbs. So we've got to first help women identify that's normal. And then we start to change the conversation of how do you make it healthy for progesterone.
How about women at other life stages, perimenopause, menopause? I'm sure a huge percentage of the audience that follows you and follows me as well are finding themselves in that category, how should they be thinking about fasting?
Yeah. So to me, there's 3 phases for women. There's the fertility years, there's the perimenopause, and there's the postmenopause. So with the perimenopausal years, this is one that is really delicate, and I really encourage women, you're going to have to find your own unique rhythm with it. But let's sort of set the picture for those women. At 40, what ends up happening is your ovaries are going into retirement. And that doesn't mean you can't have a baby at 43 or 45. But in general, the ovaries are like, okay, like I've done a job here for a very long time, and now I'm going to go into retirement and slowly back out. But I'm going to do 2 things as I go through that process. One, it's going to take me about 10 or 15 years to go into this retirement phase. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions of perimenopause is that we think it's like a switch that goes on and off. That's not the case. It's about a 10-year journey of these decline of hormones. Second thing is, because the body's so well designed, what it does is it has to hand over the job of making sex hormones to a different organ. And what it does is it hands it over to the adrenal glands. Now, let's talk about a 45-year-old woman, a 43-year-old woman who's got teenage kids, is balancing work and family, is like maxed out. And now her adrenals have been in high mode, like a high performance mode, and now has to take over the job of making sex hormones. Okay, now those adrenals are very loaded. So I set that all up to say we have to think about the adrenals for the perimenopausal woman as we move through different fasts. Because if you throw a 3-day water fast at a perimenopausal woman, at the wrong time of her cycle, you could put her into a really difficult hormonal state. So what I recommend for perimenopausal women is you really want to get to know the characteristics of your hormones. You want to start tracking your cycle. I'm 53 now. At 43, I started tracking my cycle for the first time. You want to know what day you're on, and then you want to know what hormone is coming in. And when you know those 2 things, which I teach you that in the book, now you know, okay, it's day 10 of my cycle, estrogen's coming in. Estrogen likes keto. Estrogen likes fasting. Estrogen likes my extreme exercise. Great. Let's use that tool. Now, when you get into the back half of your cycle, it's day 22. Okay, now I need to look at progesterone and really nourish progesterone. At 40, as you go into this perimenopausal state, progesterone's just going down, down, down. You're never getting progesterone back to what it was in your 20s. So that back half, you really got to go more into nurture. So it becomes this sort of dance you do with your hormones, but you first have to get to know your cycle, and then you need to get to know the personality of these hormones and what they need from you so that you can really maximize that.
You were sharing that there's a lot of variation during this time, and it's important that you kind of play with it for a woman that finds herself in this stage, this transition stage of 10 to 15 years where the ovaries are going in retirement before menopause. What are some examples, if any, that you could think of from your own life where you kind of thought something was a good idea, but then you found through testing it out, something else worked better for you? Anything come to mind?
Oh, well, fasting this is how I discovered everything that I teach in Fast Like a Girl, was at 43. At 40, I went into 40 wanting to be in the best shape of my life. I did all the right things, and I was working out, and I was eating all day long, and everything clinically was clean in my lifestyle. By 43, I had the worst perimenopausal symptoms ever.
And can you just explain what they were?
Yeah. So trouble sleeping, hot flashes at night, really irritable. When my kids, at that point were teenagers, and it was like anything they did just kind of really set me off. Almost became intolerant to stress. A lot of injuries. Like I'm an athlete, and a lot of like knee and hip stuff just wouldn't go away, and it just kept showing up, and lingering injuries. And anxiety. I'd never had anxiety before, where like I'd just be sitting on the couch and like I just would feel anxious, and my brain was like, what is going on? There's nothing I'm doing. I'm just sitting on my couch. How could I be anxious? And that was the first time I'd ever experienced anxiety before. So that was kind of what I had. And then I discovered fasting. And so what I did is I loved how, weight gain was another thing that's really common in your 40s. Like all your old tricks are not working anymore. Everything you did in your 30s and 20s to keep your body in great shape, not working anymore.
What was an example of something that you were doing, right, for weight management in particular? Obviously, you've always had a little bit of like a wellness focus. So maybe some of the stuff that people are doing, you're not going to be doing. But was there anything that was an old trick in your book that stopped working for you?
Exercise.
Exercise. So just exercise alone as a vehicle to sort of maintain weight, that in itself was not moving the needle forward.
And so I just started running more. I'm a runner. I love to run. And I would just throw more at it. And the more I threw at it, the harder, the less my body responded positively. It actually started responding more negatively. So then I found fasting, and I started throwing fasts at it, and longer fasts. And the shorter fast started to move some of the needle for me. I started to see that there was like some weight that was dropping. And then when I started doing it, I threw some 3-day water fasts at it. And I started to see massive weight loss drop. But what I didn't know then was how to vary it to my cycle. I was doing it at the wrong time of my cycle, which is how I came upon all of this.
So let's talk about that personalization piece, because you're known for really providing sort of a bunch of options for people for a fasting journey that can help them towards that goal. And we'll kind of cover a few of those, and we'll come back to maybe, I don't know if there's any additional distinctions you want to share for like women that are in the menopausal years, because we talked about the transition years.
Yeah. Let's talk about because I always get asked these questions, all the postmenopausal women, and I always say, I'm not leaving you out. It's just different. So you don't have a cycle to time to anymore. So, but you still have 3 sex hormones to consider. And these 3 sex hormones are still declining every year of your life. That's how they're naturally supposed to do, what they're naturally supposed to do. So in the book, I put a 30-day reset in there where a postmenopausal woman can go through different length fasts, different food styles, and we can talk about that in a moment, and kind of just learn to have a rhythm with going into a low keto, coming out into what I call hormone feasting foods, which is a lot of root vegetables and some really healthy carbs, and then going into shorter fasts and then coming out. It's that ebb and flow that a postmenopausal woman still needs to think about. Whereas, if you look at a 60-year-old man who just wants to raise testosterone, he doesn't have as much of that ebb and flow to think about. So you still have these hormones to think about. You just don't have a cycle to time it to.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yep, totally.
So what I did is created one for postmenopausal women in the book.
Great.
So
let's jump into some of these fasting as a base entry point. Fasting is one of those things I'm always, it's kind of like there's a lot of buzzwords that are out there in different categories of, of different industries. For example, there's like, people talk a lot about gratitude and the benefits of gratitude, right? And in the health world, it's like fasting has been, all the rage. But when you actually look at it and you talk to people, like very few people are actually regularly practicing fasting as a part of their regimen. Anybody can kind of like quickly get excited about something and they drop off.
Right.
So as much as it feels like we've been talking a lot about fasting, still, I don't really know that many people are incorporating it. It's still the minority of individuals if it's a regular part. It's just been my experience when you talk to people. It's like, I know it's a good idea, but I'm not necessarily doing it.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I mean by it. Right. Yeah. If you go to the general public, we live in the wellness world.
Right. I know.
So there's going to be a higher percentage of people in your comments and your YouTube comments and my podcast comments. But most people, you walk down the street, I've heard of fasting. I heard it's a good thing, but I'm not necessarily doing it.
Right.
So as an on-ramp, do you have an entry place where you start people before we get into the different variations that are out there of how to begin to tap into the benefits of fasting?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I hope everybody that's listening that is like, I think it's a good idea, but I haven't started, will start after this conversation, because here's the entry point is you have to start looking at your 24 hours that you're given every single day as there is a window in which you eat and there is a window in which you fast. So I do like the concept concept that it's time restricted eating, because you're taking your eating and you're putting it in one short window. So when we talk about one meal a day, that's what we're saying is you're just in that window. And when you're eating, you're raising blood sugar. So that, and then when you're not eating, you're bringing blood sugar down, which is letting you switch into another fuel source. So what I first start doing with people is I say, just push your breakfast back an hour or push your dinner up an hour one day and start to take all the food you're eating and compress it into a shorter time period. And if you naturally do that, you push breakfast back an hour. It may be a little difficult in the beginning. That's okay. It's actually good if it's difficult. It's like going to the gym. Do you want to go to the gym and make it easy all the time, or do you want to actually push yourself to a little bit of an edge so the body can adapt? That's the same thing we're doing as we start to push breakfast back an hour, is you want to hit that hormetic stressor moment where the body is like, okay, this is stressful. And then all of a sudden it starts to kick in and turn on the ketogenic energy system for healing. Then you can push it back another hour till you're right at that intermittent fasting level, which is about 15 hours.
I'd love to chat about this a little bit. I know you've talked about this on your podcast. I've heard a few of the episodes and I've seen some clips on social media. This idea of breakfast. And of course, there's the larger concept that we've always been told that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And that's sort of being in the zeitgeist for many years.
Yeah.
And then there was this whole movement of people incorporating fasting and people doing fasting the same way. And often for a lot of people that meant skipping breakfast because it's just an easier way to do things. Yeah. Especially in a society like America, North America, European countries, Western countries, where dinner is a very social kind of component. I grew up in a tradition where fasting, which was a regular part of my parents' life and upbringing for spiritual and religious reasons, often when they fasted, it would be they'd skip dinner. That was the sort of approach they had. And that was kind of just what had been passed down for years. And I've also noticed for my wife and my sisters, again, just a little N of 3 situation that's there, is that they're not hungry right away first thing in the morning. But when they get that morning sunlight, that sort of helps them suppress some of that melatonin that's there, that's lingering in the body. They build an appetite, and at least eating something in the morning, they feel better. Where I can just drink a black coffee like I have here and kind of like go for a period of time. Yeah. My wife will literally tell me, she's like, I cannot focus. I cannot pay attention. I don't feel like I have the energy. Any thoughts about any of that that you want to chime in on?
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that. So the first thing I would say is I'm an advocate for finding your fasting lifestyle that's unique to you. So in the book, I have a whole chapter on what is a fasting lifestyle. And one of the key things is, what are you trying to do with your fasting? So in that scenario with the women in your life, I would say if you're hungrier in the morning, but not as hungry at the end of the day, then let's take your eating window and put it at starting at, maybe you open up the eating window at 9 and you close it at 5. And then you you're fasting the rest of the time.
Which is very socially, it's tough to do.
Right.
For a lot of people, which is why I appreciate the way you've shared it, which is that you have to find your fasting lifestyle.
That's right.
But I genuinely see a performance difference. Again, this is my little corner of the world and just paying attention to a lot of, the people in my life. And I'm lucky to be surrounded by amazing, women. Awesome. But it's great to get your take on that. So everybody has to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to figure it out for yourself. And here's the thing is that what I hear a lot from people who are not fasting is they will say like, that kind of thing. I'm hungry in the morning. I couldn't really go that long without fasting or without eating. And fasting is your natural state. Your body, the human body, whether you're a man or a woman, thrives when you go without food. We have all these healing mechanisms that kick in that you can't get supplements to kick in. You can't get drugs to kick in these mechanisms. So we want to understand what our personal bodies want with this fasting window. And if you're hungry all the time in the morning, but not hungry in the afternoon, or a lot of people do circadian fasting where when it's light out, they eat, and when it's dark, they don't. I think that all of that is great. But if you are going consistently every single day, 7 hours is the longest you go, 8 hours is the longest you go without food, you've completely missed a whole set of healing tools that your body has.
Mm. It's interesting you mentioned that. I also noticed for my wife in particular, again, my sisters, they can actually power through, but then it kind of hits them that they don't feel that great if they don't eat a little bit. We're not talking about like a big breakfast, and we're definitely not talking about Kellogg's and some of the other stuff that you've talked about in your podcast, but even a little bit of chicken sausage, some bok choy, some greens, just a little something in the morning, primarily fat, protein, fiber, that is just a little bit of that kick to get the brain, especially because all three of them are like more executive types and they're in meetings and they're using a lot of cognitive power, and they're not that moms aren't, they're probably even using even more cognitive power that are out there. But yeah, I think it just goes back to everybody sort of figuring out what is their unique window and what can they keep up with.
That's right.
In their life.
That's
because if you can't keep up with it, then you can't tap into the benefits.
Yeah. I'll share a story of a beautiful interaction that I had with a man this summer who came to me, and he was 300 pounds. And he said, I need your help. And he's like, if I don't change my food behavior, I'm going to die. And I have 2 kids and a wife. What can fasting do for me? And when I dove into his food addiction, it was all the worst things. It was the standard American diet. It was like 12 sodas a day. And he had been on every diet. And so I knew I couldn't just say, well, gosh, get rid of your soda. That's an easy answer. I asked him to take all the food he was eating and start to compress it into a shorter eating window. So we did exactly what I taught you. I had him just back breakfast back an hour. And we did that every single day, where we just slowly took all of this horrible food and put it into about an 8 to 10 hour eating window. First month, he didn't change anything. He lost 13 pounds first month. Still drinking all the soda, still eating all the hamburgers. Next month, I just kept him at that he was doing around 15, 16 hours of fasting. I asked him, could he just have soda outside his home? Don't bring soda inside his home. So we just worked on the soda thread. Second month, 10 more pounds. Third month, still let him eat whatever he wanted, just soda outside the home. He had to add in protein. Still kept him at that same eating window. We didn't even vary the fast, just add in more protein. He lost another 20 pounds. So you're looking at, in 3 months, this man was able to lose over 40 pounds just by compressing the eating window and changing a few habits. That, to me, is the power of what the body does when you just give it a rest, give it a chance to click into this ketogenic system and to heal you. And for women, and back to the women in your life, I actually would suspect that if I sat down with them, or they read the book and we taught them, like, hey, here's the part of your cycle where it's really good to eat more breakfast. And here's part of your cycle, you may notice you're not as hungry for breakfast. And how do we have that natural rhythm with it, that they would start to find that fasting, they would actually crave it at different times of their month.
Give me your perspective on some of the GLP-1 drugs that are out there. I don't know if you've seen this stat, but for the first time in the history of the United States, we had a lowering in the obesity rate.
Right.
It's been kind of traveling around social media. Not a ton of people have been talking about it, but there's definitely been a reduction in the obesity rate for the first time. And I think the upward trajectory of basically since we've been looking at the stats, it's been going up every single year. Yeah. There's been a small dip, and most people are attributing that to, the millions and millions of prescriptions that are out there, especially for people who have quite a lot of weight to lose.
Yeah.
And using some of these GLP-1 peptides that are out there. What is your perspective? Give us your ideas and your sort of range on this subject.
So the first thing I'm going to have to go with is, how convenient and profitable is it that the food industry poured toxins into our system that made us, there's literally something called an obesogen that I talk about it in Eat Like a Girl, that turns a stem cell that was going to make bone and turns that stem cell into making fat cells. So we've been pouring chemicals into our food. We've been hijacking everybody's dopamine, their taste buds, by making all these foods hit the dopamine sensor systems. And people are gaining more and more weight because of the food system. So then along comes Big Pharma, and Big Pharma now has the solution. So this marriage between big food and big pharma, I know Casey talks about it, is too incestuous and it's ridiculous. Okay, so that's my overarching feeling that we need to just understand what's going on here. Okay, second thing, it's been a miracle for some people. Absolutely. Like people who couldn't get out of that weight gain cycle that the big food industry put them into, they can take these medications and they can start to lose weight for the first time. That's a hallelujah moment. And these medications should be left for the obese. They should not be for the person who wants to lose 10 pounds. They should be there for the person who's like, I just need some momentum. And I've seen it work amazing for that. And the goal of every drug should be get on, do the thing that it was meant to do, and get off. Which would mean that everybody taking these weight loss drugs needs to change their lifestyle. So that's where I look at the fasting lifestyle, learning how to tack on a fasting window to an eating window every day. That kills hunger. I've seen it over and over and over again. So my dream for where we are right now is that we use those drugs as a momentary crutch to be able to get some momentum while we teach people this metabolic switch and how to be healthy while we get the toxins out of our food system. If we can do all of that, then what we should see 10 years from now is a reduction in the need for these drugs. So I really want to point that out. Last thing I want to point out on this that I don't think is being taught enough is that these drugs are adding in this GLP-1 hormone that your microbiome naturally makes. You and I make this GLP-1 hormone. As you get older, you make less of it. But when I dove into recent research, this is like in the last 3 months, I found a very startling article that showed that how the microbes in your gut that help to produce GLP-1 hormone, what destroys those microbes is fat. Okay, then of course I had to dive in and be like, which fat? And sure enough, if you dive deeper, it is the toxic fats. It is the canola oils. It is the cottonseed oils. It is the corn. It is all these inflammatory oils that big food has permeated into our system, has destroyed the microbiome. So we stop producing the GLP-1 hormone. Now we have to take the weight loss drug to add it back in. That's the crime. So, okay, knowing that, if you're on a drug, if you're thinking about going on to the drug, the first thing you got to do is make sure you do not eat the toxic fats at all. Like that should be your number one food move. Second thing is let's start building you a fasting lifestyle so you can keep your hunger down, because when you get little doses of ketones throughout the day, the ketones go up and shut off the hunger hormone. So let's get you some small doses of ketones by tacking on these fasting windows. And then what's your exit strategy? How are you going to get off of that? That to me is the more complete view. We need to look at it as opposed to, I failed at every diet. My doctor prescribed this for me. Now I'm going to take this. I've lost weight, but I got to stay on that. There's no empowerment in that. People don't, people are happy they lost weight, but they don't walk away and go, oh my God, I did something amazingly hard for myself and I overcame all these obstacles. There's no internal growth that happens with that, which is why I think it should be a Band-Aid. Get in, change your diet, get off. You're the healer, not the medication.
When they do lead to weight loss for people who are on them, what are your thoughts about how that weight loss ends up happening? Is it just people are eating less?
Eating less. They're eating less.
Okay.
So there's the calorie in, calorie out, so you're eating less calories for sure. Okay, but what happens when people get off of them? They gain it back because the set point is so little. So if we can teach them to eat and do this fasting window, so they're not just eating little bits all day long, that they're actually have an eating window. Maybe they pick a 4 or 5 hour eating window and they're getting enough nutrients in. The other thing I'm worried about, I put this in Eat Like a Girl, there's 24 nutrients the female body needs to make a hormone. If you're like the people I've met that are on these drugs, they're eating like a snack. They're eating a small amount of food. So how are they getting all the nutrients to be able to make hormones long term? So what if we teach them eating windows, fasting windows? We give them a shorter period. We teach them high density quality food. Like you're going to need to make your food count. You got to make sure you're getting good food. And maybe you're doing one meal a day. You got to make sure that meal counts. And then we teach them how to use this metabolic switch. We teach them what we've been talking about, eat in the light. We teach them sleep, prioritize sleep and movement, and we get them a whole lifestyle. They'll be off that medication shortly. That's the dream I have.
It's clear that a lot of people are using them, and it's clear that a lot of people may ultimately not want to use them forever. And that's why this conversation is super important. And I love asking individuals because it's the reality. People are using it, regardless of our opinion or not opinion. They're using it. And how can we help steer people in a healthier direction, or at least make them aware of things that their doctor isn't talking to them about, which you've shared a few of those things. All right, we still have a couple more principles that I want to talk about here as we still have some time together. Well, one of the key principles that you have, I believe this is principle number 3, is eat for your microbes, not your taste buds.
Yes.
Okay. This was another, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, I know this is what you're saying, but I also know Mindy's going to teach us how it can be both, because this is a cookbook.
I keep calling it a food book. Like the front half of the book is what I wrote, the back half, and it was 53,000 words. So to give you an idea, that front half is 53,000 words. Fast Like a Girl was 83,000 words. So just the front material is a book unto itself. But then I hired 2 chefs, a plant-based chef, an omnivore chef, professional chefs that killed it with the recipes. So I'm hoping people will see that eating is fun and tastes really good.
Yeah, and they can merge the two of those. They can eat for their microbes and they can eat for their taste buds too. But let's start off with what you meant by that, like eating for your microbes.
Yeah, your microbes control your taste buds. That's what I want people to know. Your microbes in your gut control your taste buds. Like they have been able to measure and I don't know it off the top of my head, there's a specific microbe that makes you crave chocolate. We know a fungus called Candida, a lot of people have had it, will make you crave sugar. So you think, and I'm going back through the lens of women, you think that you're undisciplined because you can't stay off of sugar. You can't get away from alcohol. You can't get away from your favorite food that, your bag of Doritos. But what you don't realize is that inside the gut is an ecosystem. And that ecosystem has a variety of different microbes that are pulling the little levers telling you, feed me. If there's a fungus called Candida, it's like, give me some carbs and sugar and maybe some alcohol so that I can stay alive. If it's the chocolate bacteria, then it's saying, hey, feed me chocolate so I can stay alive.
Doritos bacteria?
No, the Doritos, I think, is more dopamine. We're just wanting more of the dopamine hit, that the chemicals that have been sprayed on there. So I want people, in making that statement, I want women every single meal to look at a meal and say, what am I feeding my microbes? What am I feeding my microbes with? Okay, well, what do we feed our microbes with? This is plants. This is your green leafy vegetables. Are you adding new microbes in with fermented food? I don't know any expert that will tell you, oh, fermented food is bad, except for maybe a SIBO expert who will tell people to stay off of it for SIBO. But everybody, fermented foods, add good ones in. Prebiotic foods, not to promote your wife's amazing seed business, but I started using those seeds. Every time I was putting them on everything, I could feel my stomach gurgling. And it was like, I almost was like, my microbes were like, yeah, thank you. You just gave me a good variety of seeds, because it's a prebiotic for your microbes so that your microbes can start to grow. So instead, what we do is we go out to dinner and we're like, what are you in the mood for? We look at a menu. What are you in the mood for? When I look at a menu, I literally go, what on this menu have I not eaten? Because I need to eat something different. Like I was in Turkey recently. I was in Istanbul, and there was braised goat on the menu. And I was like, oh, wow, I haven't had goat.
I thought you were about to say goat brain.
Not goat brain. Yeah, no, I would have passed on that one. But braised goat, I'm like, I wonder what the amino acid profile of braised goat is. Like, I don't know, but I don't ever eat it. I should probably eat it. And then I look at, okay, what am I feeding my microbes in this meal? So there's always something that is usually fibrous. That's the best thing. Like, what vegetable am I including? You would rarely see me eat a meal without some kind of vegetable in it. So the point of that was, don't forget your microbes. And the interesting study that I have been talking a lot about was something called the every other day diet. It was actually a researcher that, this is when fasting first came out. What she did is she took a group of individuals that were massively overweight and had horrible metabolic markers. And she said, this is what you're going to do for a year. Every day you eat whatever you want, or one day you eat whatever you want. And most of them are eating the horrible Western diet. And the next day you don't eat at all, you're going to fast. And the next day you eat whatever you want. And the next day you're going to fast. So every other day you're fasting. At the end of the year, what she found was not only did all the metabolic markers change, but what surprised her was their food choices changed. Because in that fasting, you're getting rid of these bad bacteria. And so over time, those bacteria stopped giving signals to the brain to feed it the wrong foods, and they started choosing better foods. Now, there's where we look at women and we're like, oh my gosh, what if we could do that for women, where all of a sudden it doesn't take willpower, it doesn't take discipline to make the right food choice. They actually crave the right food choice. I can tell you my microbes crave salads. If I don't get a salad a day, I don't feel complete. Now, that's not because I'm like a health nut or anything like that. It's because I have been feeding my microbes for years now. And those microbes want more fiber to be able to stay alive.
I love that. Can I add one layer to that, which is that,
course.
Just like we're talking about, I've seen in this sort of functional integrative space, which I've been a part of for a long time, we also have our own ways, and I'm putting myself right in this bucket, right? Yeah. Even though I'm not a clinician, we have our own ways of, just like women, because we're talking about women right now, right? It can happen to men and women, but just like women can hyper obsess about calories, right? The one thing that I have seen that I've been doing more of talking about on the podcast is that when we talk about just focusing and doubling down on the basics, which I know you believe in too, right? Eating the right amount of protein, making sure you're not under-fueled, especially if you're trying to be more active, not being sedentary, focusing on your sleep, surrounding yourself with good community, hydrating, all the basics that are there. A lot of these other components, from what I've seen, they start to sort themselves out. I do see, just like there's that hyper focus on calories in the functional medicine space, there could be this hyper focus that if a woman feels that she's craving something sweet, it's like, oh, I immediately have candida. I want to say, like, my microbes are in a great state. I still crave sweet stuff.
Of course. I'm not saying you won't.
And I'm not saying you don't say that. Yeah. I'm saying that this is just another underneath lens that I'm adding to the conversation, which I know that you would agree with.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? It's not to go against anything you're saying, it's to build on top of what you're saying. Is that when you do a lot of the basics, a lot of that stuff starts to sort itself out.
That's right.
And nothing tastes as good, to pull from a Tony Robbins quote, as being healthy feels. Bingo. And it's okay to crave sweet stuff. It's okay to have these components or things or whatever. There can be things that just take time to sort themselves out because we're nailing the basics that, you talk about on your podcast.
Yeah, this is such an important point because we've overcomplicated everything. This is why the first thing I put in the book is these foundational 5 ideas. Like, just follow these 5, like focus on these 5 so you don't lose your way. So I agree with you. There should be a basic. Second thing is, health isn't deprivation. So when we are like, oh, I can't have that because I don't eat sugar. Let me tell you what I ate a lot in Istanbul? What do you
Tell
think?
me.
What do you think I ate a lot?
Dates?
I did eat a lot of dates.
Baklava?
Baklava.
There we go.
I don't even eat gluten, but I'm like, I'm in the land of baklava. I am going to try every little bit of baklava that I could try. I was there for 2 weeks. I wanted the full experience. I didn't beat myself up. And then I came home and I noticed, because I've had candida before, I'm craving a little more sugar. I'm going to be a little stricter now with no sugar so I could get that system back on track.
Do you think it was genuinely in that short period of time? I'm asking, right? I'm not being confrontational or anything. Like, this is genuinely my curiosity, right? Do you think that you actually changed your gut microbiome in that period of time and your candida grew? Or is it like your palate just got used to having something sweet? Or is it a little bit of both?
It's probably a little bit of both. Now, the thing that I don't talk about a lot, and I probably should talk about it, is I had a major sugar addiction in my early 20s. And I had massive candida that led to massive Epstein-Barr virus that gave me chronic fatigue at 21 years old.
Wow.
So I know when that brain is like, it's the end of a meal, you should go get something sweet. Like, there's certain patterns that I see for myself that I'm like, ooh, I'm falling back into that sugaraholic world. So like with the baklava, after like 4 or 5 days of it, I could feel myself now wanting it everywhere I went. And I was like, maybe I take a day or 2 off. But that's just because I know myself and I know that sugar addiction. So
yeah,
it's
you
probably
were saying some of the old sort of patterns come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and my wife craves sweet stuff after a meal. And it's like, great, here's a bowl full of berries or other stuff. And sometimes it's an indulgence. Yeah. But this goes back to your personalization, is that depending on your goals, you have to find out the right strategy that's there for you.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And part of my strategy is I love experiences.
Yeah.
So when I go to like, a country like Turkey that I've never been to, I want to experience all of it. And so I'm not going to be like, I'm gluten-free. They didn't have gluten-free baklava.
Totally.
I was just like, I just want to experience this. And it's new for my body. And there's love for my body. I don't like white knuckle it or beat myself up. I just embrace the experience.
Yeah. And your body should have, okay, I'll be careful with the word should, but the body was designed for range.
That's right.
Right?
That's
just
right.
like I really appreciated I've listened to a bunch of your episodes and I think you do a great job. And you also invite on people who have different viewpoints on things. And you guys, talk about it and talk about where you align and where you don't.
Where Stacey and I really aligned on? I got to give you a little backstory on the Stacey thing. So many people were tagging Stacey and I saying, could you two get together because you're disagreeing on fasting for women? And so I was like, yeah, let's talk. Like, I think this is the beautiful thing of a podcast is we can have these really healthy discussions and not have
everybody grows.
Yeah. So I bring her on, she comes on and it was on Zoom. And the minute I see her, I'm like, do you know why you're here? And she's like, I know why I'm here. I'm like, are you getting tagged? She's like, I'm getting tagged. I'm like, okay, let's have this conversation. And what we finally came to was, for starters, Stacey's lens is always through the very active woman, of a woman who's doing centuries and marathons and like really
wants to get there.
Or wants to get there. Yeah, we're talking somebody who's really prioritizing fitness at a higher level. I would say my people are people that are also doing that, but they're also, I would say the majority of them are the people that the healthcare system's tossed aside. The people who have dieted forever and haven't succeeded and are finally looking for a way to lose the 30-pound menopausal belly weight that they gained 10 years ago. So our demographics is a little bit different. The second thing is that we agreed on hard. I don't know if you remember that from the conversation at the end. She said, we both agree in hard. I agree you should work out hard. You agree you should do hard through fasting. I feel like you shouldn't put those two hards together if you're a menopausal woman. And I would agree with that.
And now I remember exactly what I was going to bring up, which was you were talking about for a long time in sort of the space. I've even had people on this podcast repeat it. It was really advice directed towards women. Don't work out too hard. That's going to spike cortisol. Yeah. Cortisol leads to belly fat. Yeah. But that's not the complete story.
No, it's not.
Right? That's a partial story.
Yeah.
Just like a lot of things that we've been talking about here. It's like, hey, can it be a little bit of both?
Yeah.
Right? And then people are sort of trying to navigate and understand both of those things. It's that the part that you guys came to on together is that actually pushing the body, even for women. Right? Yeah. Women are stronger than men. Like they should be able to push their bodies in a way that is designed for them, in sync with their cycle, which is a big part of what you talk about. But if you don't challenge the body, what are you losing out on?
That's right.
And in that same way that, your body should be able to go to Turkey, have some baklava, come back and reach, go back into your homeostasis and your pattern and your habits that are there. In that same way, a tough workout, like a resistance training workout, everybody's talking about it these days, your body should be able to handle that, right?
That's right.
And it's not done the right way. It should actually leave you with more energy afterwards. You're not smashed like a Barry's boot camp or something like that. You actually have more energy that's there. So we want to push the body, men, women, everybody. We want to push the body in a healthy way to build up some of that resilience, because then we take that into our later years in life.
That's right.
It's the people that have not been physically challenged, especially, that unfortunately, you see it, I see it, it leads to just this general sense of frailty.
That's right.
Man or woman, and this fear of movement. I have a family member and I love her so dearly. And the fear is, even with a fast-paced walking, that all of a sudden her heart is beating faster. And then there's a worry that, I don't know, is this going to lead to some sort of stress on my heart? Am I not supposed to be tolerating this? I don't like this feeling. And obviously that's a little bit mental, it's a little bit physical, but we want to bring back in this resilience to be able to challenge the body.
That's right.
And there's obviously a lot of different ways to be able to do that.
Yeah, I call it microdosing hard. We need to microdose hard. If you think of the old model of aging, it was like you hit retirement day, you had a party, and then you sat around and you watched the football game every Sunday and you hung out with all the same people and you drove the same way to the supermarket and bought the same foods and you hung out with this, it's like same. Make it easy now. You're retired. Okay, that's the fastest path to aging. If you want to age fast, hang out with the same people, eat the same food, watch the same news channel, drive in the same pattern. Just keep doing the same thing you've done for 60 years and you will find, and make your life easy, you're going to find you're going to age quicker. The best thing we can do when we get into our 50s and 60s is new. This is why I went to Turkey. I'm like, plop me in a foreign country that is got many different rituals. I mean, prayers are going off 5 times a day over the loudspeaker. The food is different. The language is different. It wasn't always easy every day. I didn't always get the food I wanted. I wasn't always fasting, didn't always have the Turkish coffee day after day. But in that hard, my body had to adapt and become stronger. So putting ourselves, whether it's fasting or food or travel or hang out, here's a good one for this day and age. How about we go hang out with somebody who thinks politically different than us? What if we sit down and have a conversation, a humane conversation with somebody who completely sees where this country should go in a different way? You know what would happen to both of those individuals is neuroplasticity. You would be forced to have to grow new neurons in that conversation. But what we're doing is, you don't believe what I think? Boom. I don't want to hear you. Cancel culture. Just going to shut this down and I'm going to hang out with my people. That is the worst thing we can do. If we're going to stop aging, you want to be a pro-ager is what I call it. Start putting yourself in little environments that are uncomfortable. And if they're uncomfortable, you have a better chance of going to 100.
Breaking a fast. How do we navigate that component?
Yeah. So there's a whole chapter in the book on this because this is outside the coffee. This is the second most important or popular question that I get asked. And here's the deal, is that anything... Let's start with what breaks a fast, and then I want to go to how do you break a fast. Anything that raises your blood sugar over this 5 points that I talked about is going to pull you out of a fasted state. So let's start there. We already talked about how you can measure it and all of that. Now, when you go into food, this is so important, and I think this is where fasting has gotten a bad rap, especially with the microbiome. You have to remember that you just went into this healing phase, and you're now entering back into food. And so you can amplify that healing phase if you so choose. And I recommend you look at 3 different types of foods that you want to break your fast with. If you are trying to build muscle, I highly recommend breaking your fast with protein. And Gabrielle Lyon is a huge advocate of this and really admire her work. 30 grams of protein at that first meal so you can trigger an amino acid receptor that will make that muscle stronger, so you can trigger mTOR, which is the opposite of autophagy, and really start to create some growth. Women especially, we need to focus on muscle. I 1,000% feel that muscle is our organ of longevity. The more muscle we have, the more insulin receptors we have, the more we can stop the breakdown of muscle that happens when we're adrenal fatigued. Very common to see that. So we need to preserve muscle. So that's number one. Second thing would be those of you that have been on antibiotics for years, those of you that have been on birth control for so long, and your gut's in bad shape, then I really encourage you, what happens the longer you fast is the old bacteria are dying off, and you've created this beautiful new environment for the good bacteria to grow. So it's like tilling your garden, and now your body's saying, okay, give me some plants to grow so I can grow the good that you want. Well, if you come in with polyphenol-rich foods, when you come in with probiotic-rich, prebiotic foods, at that first meal, you are feeding those good bacteria and you're allowing them to grow. So, and you can take both of those principles and put them together by eating a big salad with plenty of protein on it. And these principles don't have to be individual. You just pull them out according to what you want. The third principle, and then I'll kind of talk about how this looks in application, is if you are thinking, gosh, it's 2:00, I want to eat, I'm going to have my meal, but I won't be getting dinner for another 4 hours, then throw some fat in there. Fat will stop that desire to go back into food and overeat. I saw this a lot in my community where people were like, I'm doing well in my fasting window, but then once I open up my eating window, I can't control myself. Mm-hmm. And so once I started to add in fat and told them eat some healthy fat in that first meal, that binge eating completely stopped. Mm. So it's really this 3-tool system. Add in the protein if you're trying to build muscle and you're trying to stimulate mTOR. If you need to repair your gut, you really want to feed those good microbes. Be sure, I call them the 3 Ps. Add in the polyphenol, probiotic, prebiotic foods. And if you're really worried about that eating window and eating too much now, make sure you're adding some fat. And you can combine them all in one meal.
Great. I love that. And even more details inside of the book that people can pick up.
We actually did something really cool with this book.
I'm going to answer this. You launched an app. Is that right?
Well, I did launch an app too,
okay.
but we can talk about that. But before
what'd you do
that,
with this book? Tell us.
But thank you for noticing that. I hired a chef.
Oh yes. So I was looking at the recipes when you handed me the book. Chicken nuggets. Yeah. You have a recipe for chicken nuggets inside of it.
That's right. So we have, some of them are tried and true recipes. My husband and I love to cook. This is one of our passions that we do together. And so some of them are tried and true recipes, but then I really wanted some good recipes around what to break a fast with, because it was such a common question. So there's there's a whole category of break your fast recipes.
Is there another? You shared this testimonial, this gentleman that you met this summer who was 300 pounds, and you kind of really helped him turn his life around through following sort of a stage process. Mm-hmm. In putting this book together and thinking about all the people that have written in to you, is there another testimonial that comes to mind of somebody who really felt like they either hit rock bottom or were so confused that they didn't know how to move forward? And a testimony that comes to mind that, stepping into your methodology helped them really reset, so to speak, and now get true access to their health and step into their goals. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, I'll tell you 2 of my favorite.
Yeah, please.
But I always say, go to my YouTube channel and read the comments. It still blows me away how people I do not know are losing so much weight and getting off so many medications with the support of their doctor. Like, it blows me away what an incredible tool that is. But there's two very clear ones that always stick out to me that involve women. The first was actually a woman on my team who was really frustrated because she couldn't get pregnant. And so 2 years of trying to get pregnant and nothing. She went to her OB. Her OB said, your BMI is too high. Okay, well, the BMI in general is thrown in women's face a lot, and there's a whole inaccuracy with the BMI. So if you've ever been told you were too overweight because of the BMI, I really want to relieve you.
It's not the best tool.
Yeah, relieve you of that pressure. So she was frustrated. She said, you're never going to get pregnant if you don't bring your BMI down, is what her OB told her. So I put her on the 30-day reset that I wrote in the book. I taught her how to fast like a girl. And I said, give it 90 days, and then we'll look at where else in your hormones you might need some modifications. Within 30 days, she was pregnant.
Wow.
2 years, and did fast like a girl, 30 days was pregnant. Now, I then was like, well, that's cool. Let me test this. I've tested it on 5 women. It's not a big study. All 5 pregnant within 30 days. So now it doesn't mean the whole world's going to get pregnant off of protocols like this. Everybody's reason for infertility is different, but that blew me away. Second thing that I loved was this was a woman in Australia who wrote to us and told us that she had a full hysterectomy at like early 40s. And they said within, 3 months, her sex hormones would be completely similar to a postmenopausal woman. 3 years later, after the hysterectomy, she still had sex hormones that were age consistent with a 43-year-old. They had only cut in about half. They hadn't gone into this postmenopausal state.
Wow.
And so she wasn't even on any type of synthetic hormone or hormone replacement therapy at all. The doctor didn't feel comfortable putting her on it because she was still making these hormones. Well, that's because she was fasting like a girl and she was using the principles to bring these hormones out in their glory, and the adrenals and other tissues were still making sex hormones. So 3 years after the hysterectomy, she still didn't require hormone replacement. That one blew me away.
That's incredible.
So
People love hearing testimonials because it's a reminder that there's other people that have been in very challenging situations.
Yep.
There's other people that didn't know what to do next. There's other people that were also feeling confused by all the different viewpoints and opinions that are out there, but something clicked for them and they said, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot.
That's right.
And in giving it a shot and following a plan and having the support that's there by following a plan like yours, they were able to see a possibility by completely sort of changing their approach, which was often based in either outdated information, well-intentioned advice, but that isn't backed by the latest science and research, or something else.
Yeah.
And that's the power of following a plan.
Yeah.
That has worked for other people and trying it on and personalizing it.
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing I'm trying to bring to the fasting world for women is that when we go back and we look at the history of fasting, I really give people like Walter Longo and Jason Fung and Dave Asprey. I mean, they've been talking about fasting for a long time. And as it started to gain momentum, we started to hear more and more about women shouldn't do it. Women shouldn't do it. I still run into women nowadays that are like, I'm not supposed to do it. I'm a woman. I even see it sometimes on our Facebook pages. So what I really wanted to bring is we have to understand as women, there's so much we have to do differently. And fasting is one of those things. And don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't throw fasting out because one woman said it didn't work for her. One doctor said, don't do it. Learn how to do it in accordance with your hormones. Test it out, try it out, understand the little nuances that are required, and then judge it for yourself. And I think it's too common, especially for women, and I'm calling myself out in this, that we get in this sort of comparison model, like this diet worked for my friend, so now I'm going to go hop on that diet. And then it doesn't work and we start to shame ourselves or we feel guilty that didn't it work for me? It must be something wrong with me. What I am here to tell you from seeing millions of women of all different backgrounds is that fasting works for women. You just have to find your groove with it. And that's the tricky part. And that's what the whole book is about, is helping you navigate that.
The book is out there, Fast Like a Girl, A Woman's Guide to Using the Healing Power of Fasting to Burn Fat, Boost Energy, and Balance Hormones. Mindy, we've mentioned the YouTube channel. We've mentioned you have the podcast as well. You have the Facebook group, but it all can be found on your website and you're pretty active on social media as well. Do you want to send people to your social media?
Yeah, you can go. I mean, each social has a little different thing. We have in the Resetter Collaborative on Facebook is a free fasting group. There's 60,000 people in there that are doing exactly what we've just been talking about. So you can join that. YouTube is like thousands. I think I have over 1,000 videos now. You can dive into what you need to know there. Instagram's actually where I am most of the time. I read the DMs. I am there looking at the comments. So we take all those videos and we put them into reels. So you guys can take this information and take it into small chunks. So yeah, I'm kind of everywhere. I have a podcast. I bring on interesting people. I'd love to bring you onto my podcast.
I hate being interviewed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No.
I'd much rather do the interview.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
But I appreciate the offer.
That's hysterical.
I'd much rather have people like you on who I can spread the word about. but I really don't like to be interviewed.
Yeah. I love talking to people. I love to get to know the heart
You're great
of people.
At it. I've seen a few of your interviews.
Thank you.
We've had some similar guests that have been on the show, and I love the angle that you take with them. I'm like, wow, that was a great question. I didn't think about asking that, or, from a woman's perspective, oh, this is really unique. That's why it's so great. We need a million more of you. We need a million more of all the health educators that are out there.
Thank you.
Because people need to hear it from somebody
Different
that
angles.
They resonate with.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that person with your life experiences and your background and being the mother of 2 kids, you're going to have a different perspective that's going to resonate with someone.
Yeah.
And that's the click that they need to step into their change in
That's
their
right.
life. So,
yeah. And what's interesting with women, the one piece that I've been really trying, my rally cry to all women is that it doesn't matter your age, we need to all come together because like the postmenopausal woman, there's so much wisdom in a 60-year-old woman. If you have a 60-year-old woman in your life, like sit down with her and listen to her talk. And then I've got so many 40-year-old women in my life right now that are really starting to feel the changes in their hormones. So, and they're discovering that their whole life led up to these hormonal changes. Leanne Rimes is one of them. I just put out her podcast. I interviewed her on my podcast, and I asked her, could we just go through your whole health history? Let's go through your toxic load. Let's go through what happened to your neurotransmitters, winning a Grammy at 14, like what happened to your dopamine. And it's beautiful when you hear her talk and you hear her whole journey. It's like you start to see where your journey matters, where you might have had some physical, emotional stress somewhere in your hormonal experience that is making the woman that you are today. So I just love talking and bringing out these conversations because we have so much to learn from each other.
Well, you do it well. And I want to acknowledge you for doing it and committing your life's
you.
work to this process, especially focusing on women. For a long time, we're underrepresented, and there wasn't enough conversation about, okay, great, let's stress test these ideas of what works, what doesn't. We went on one extreme. The original extreme was fasting is dangerous, right? There was a whole bunch of conversations around that, especially in like the early 2000s, like don't do fasting, it's dangerous. To then, hey, here's all the latest research on fasting. Everybody should do it, which was the subtext that everybody should do it one way, right? Kind of like what works for men in particular, because that was just what was being studied at the time.
Right.
To then, hey, it's dangerous again for women. They shouldn't do it. And now we're finding, like in a lot of areas of life, politics, this, that, we're finding that happy medium, which is let's look at the nuanced approach and make sure we treat each idea independently so we can figure out what best works for the situation. Hey, YouTube, if you enjoyed what you just saw, keep watching for more great content on how to improve your brain and your life.
And that all came about, again, because of us in the medical profession. We allowed this myth that vascular disease, cardiovascular disease, is caused by cholesterol.